You're listening to
and such a short amount of time to do it in. We were really
a Mamma Mia podcast.
Hi there. This is not Mia Friedman. This is Emma Gillespie, and I'm the host of Mamma Mia's storytelling podcast, Extraordinary Stories. I'm in your ears right now because I wanted to share with you the first episode of our new season, all about young talent time. This 6-part series will take you behind the scenes of Australia's child star factory, and we speak to everyone. I mean everyone. I'm talking Dannii Minogue, Johnny Young, Tina Arena, everyone and anyone who you know and love from Young Talent Time. They are on this podcast. The rest of this series is available on M+, which is Mamma Mia's subscription offering. Head to mammamia.com.au/M+, and make sure you're signed up so you can hear all of these episodes as they're released. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy the first episode. It's November 1979. Summer is just around the corner. The days are getting longer and the nights are getting warmer. The radio is dominated by the sounds of Blondie, Rod Stewart, Donna Summer and Split Enz. Your mum is obsessed with her new VHS videotape recorder. And your dad? He's still talking about Carlton's win over the Magpies in the VFL Grand Final. But you don't care about that. You need to get home. It's Saturday after all. And on Saturday nights, the only show on TV that matters is on. And it's called Young Talent Time. Your parents have dragged you to some boring barbecue with the other kids. They said you would be leaving soon, but that was 15 minutes ago and Mum still hasn't finished talking. She promised to get you and your siblings home in time for the start of the show. You've been practicing your routines all week. Singing in the shower every morning. You've been fighting with your sister about who would make a better soloist on the show. You've even asked your grandma to sew you all special costumes for a YTT spin-off you're planning on staging at this year's family Christmas in your auntie and uncle's backyard. Finally, after what seems like hours, you and your brother and sister hurry your parents to the car and shuffle into the back seat. It's 6:20 p.m. You've got 10 more minutes and Dad is driving so slow. Hurry up! We're going to miss the opener, you whine at him. He starts driving slower. At 6:29, the mustard-coloured Holden Kingswood pulls into the driveway of your family's house. At last, you and your siblings fling yourselves out of the car like your lives depend on it. And you barge through the front door straight to the carpet of the living room floor as you turn the TV on and flick to Channel 10 faster than you thought your fingers could move. You're sitting too close to the screen, you'll get square eyes, yells Mum. But you don't hear her. All you hear is the sound of your favourite show in the world. The reason you think television was invented at all, as the opening credit music rolls. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories, the podcast from Mamma Mia that dives deep into the stories you thought you knew, told by the women who really do. I'm your host, Emma Gillespie. In this season, we're giving ourselves permission to get nostalgic for a simpler time. One when family entertainment was king and mullet-style haircuts reigned supreme. Back to a golden age of Australian television and a piece of musical history that existed every Saturday night in the living rooms of families all over the country. Yes, we're taking you inside the child star factory that was Young Talent Time. You'll hear from some of Australia's biggest music exports, including Tina Arena and Dannii Minogue, about the show that catapulted them into stardom. We'll peek behind the scenes of the Channel 10 studio and find out what teen heartthrobs Vince Del Tito and Joey D really got up to on set. Rob Mills tells us about his determination to bring back the magic of Young Talent Time for a new generation. And we hear from the man who started it all, everyone's favourite TV dad, Johnny Young. Plus, where are they now? Karen Knowles, Bevan Adensall, they're all in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s now. So how did life turn out for the Young Talent team after they left our lounge rooms?
Young Talent Time recorded on the 23rd of the 4th, 71, for replay on air on Melbourne on the 24th of the 4th, 71, take one.
It's Young Talent Time.
When Young Talent Time exploded onto Australian scenes in the early 1970s, it was like nothing the country had ever seen. The weekly all-singing, all-dancing variety show became a must-watch, a religion, a ritual.
I used to live and breathe Young Talent Time.
Young Talent Time was a big part of my young childhood.
At its core was a group of talented kids tasked with entertaining the country. Over the course of 18 years, YTT captured the hearts and imaginations of millions of children and teens watching from home as a group of young performers found their feet and their voice on the show. The program launched the careers of dozens of professional singers, dancers and actors. A few even went on to become some of Australia's most famous entertainers and go on to have international success. Others, well, they didn't. Ever heard of Dannii Minogue? Yeah. In 1982, young Danielle's first appearance on TV sounded like this.
On the good ship, lollipop, sweet trip to the candy shop where bonbons play. On the sunny beach, peppermint bay.
What about the name Tina Arena?
And my heart is set on you. You better shape up. You better understand.
Yep, she's a Young Talent Time alumnus too. In fact, Tiny Tina, as she was then known, was on the show the longest out of all the cast members ever to appear. And she prides it as the reason she was catapulted into stardom.
I actually don't think a better platform for an apprenticeship in entertainment has ever existed since Young Talent Time. That's going to school, going to university, doing your master's, and eventually graduating with a PhD. That was the school of YTT. It was an extraordinary education and insight into how a career works.
For almost 2 decades, this show was must-see television for Australian families. And it all began with the vision of one man.
Would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon?
Well, hello, I'm Johnny Young. I'm the former host of Young Talent Time.
Then, at just 24 years old, Johnny laid the foundations of a music and TV institution. He became known to a generation of viewers as the friendly host of a family show, always ready with a song and a smile.
Whenever I hear Johnny Young's voice now, it's like hearing my dad's voice. It's just so familiar to me and just brings up all those emotions from my childhood. Love it.
But who was this man at the centre of one of Australia's best-loved TV shows? Well, before the nation grew to recognise Johnny Young as the host of Young Talent Time, he was living a whirlwind life of fame from his own music, a career which began when he was just a boy.
I knew then, as a 9-year-old, that I wanted to be an entertainer, and by the time I was 14, I had my own band in Western Australia, Johnny and the Strangers, and we became, quite popular at university balls and, all of that stuff. Plus, we did the Stomps, which were the entertainment for teenagers.
In the mid-60s, Johnny wasn't yet 18 when he was offered a role hosting a TV show called Club 17, which aired in Western Australia on Saturday afternoons. Later, he hosted the music program The Go Show in Melbourne. On both, he featured some of the biggest names in the international music scene. The Easy Beats, Bob Dylan, But in the mid-60s, with a couple of his own hits topping the charts in Australia, Johnny decided if he wanted to focus on a music career, he needed to be at the centre of it. He needed to be where it was all happening.
I decided I wanted to go to England. Everything was happening in the 60s. It was Beatle time, it was Carnaby Street. England was the place to be. The Jerry and the Pacemakers, the big 60s music was coming out of England. And I had made a friendship with the Bee Gees because they had appeared on my Go show, which I was hosting here. And they didn't have much support, really, here in Australia, because they were seen as a bit of a novelty act, the Bee Gees. But they went to England and they recorded New York Mining Disaster and had #1 worldwide. And so they were doing really well. And I rang Barry when I came to England, and he said, "Where are you staying?" I said, "Oh, I'm staying at a pub." And he said, "No, you're not. You're staying at my place."
At a flat in London, Johnny spent a year learning from Barry Gibb, arguably one of the best music producers the world has ever seen.
So he had his guitar all the time. He was playing his guitar and writing songs. I was with him when he wrote songs like Words and To Love Somebody and those kind of songs. And, I just hung. I was just hanging there and taking it all in. He said to me, "There are no rules in songwriting." There are, because normally when you write a song, you write an opening verse and then do a chorus and then do a middle eight and maybe do a musical break and then do another verse and another chorus. But he taught me that there are no rules. You don't have to follow those rules. So when I came back to Australia in 1968, I started songwriting. And I had 5 #1 hit songs with other people singing, but my songs.
John came home and turned his attention to songwriting, where his true talent shone.
From being a bit of a rock star and everything that goes with doing that, which was a different lifestyle. I was often on tour, with my band and, drinking a few beers and smoking a few smokes and doing stuff. My life changed completely in April 1971.
In the early 70s, now an industry heavyweight and running his own production company, 24-year-old Johnny was tasked with creating a new show, one that could go up against a tough opponent in a primetime slot.
The big thing on Saturday night television was football replays, because we didn't have live television and stuff then. I was asked by the network, by Network 010, whether I had any ideas for something that could go up against the football, because they had football on 9, 7 and 2, all football replays on Saturday night. Now, as a kid, I had always been a Mickey Mouse Club fan. I loved the Mickey Mouse Club.
We are the Merry Musketeers, Musketeers!
I loved it. I just loved it. And basically the format of the Mickey Mouse Club was Jimmy, who was the host, the older brother type of guy, and he had a group of kids who sang and performed and did all sorts of stuff.
There was something about the format of the Mickey Mouse Club that struck Johnny as a winning formula. So, with a few tweaks, he replicated it.
We had 3 or 4 contestants. We had a special guest and always a big opening number and a big closing number and, duets and stuff. Now, the Mickey Mouse Club used to end with, "Now it's time to say goodbye to all our family. M-I-C, see you real soon. K-Y-Y, because we like you. M-O-U-S-E," right? It was Jimmy and the kids together in the host set for the closing of the Mickey Mouse Club. So I had a hit with All My Loving, which was a slow version of the Beatles' up-tempo song. But I heard an interview with George Martin where he said that the Beatles came to him, with most of their songs in ballad form. Like She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah. It started off as a ballad. You think you've lost your love? Well, I saw her yesterday. He sped them up and made them into pop songs. I reversed that with All My Loving, which was an up-tempo hit for the Beatles, and turned it into a ballad and used it as the closing for Young Talent Time. And for 18 years, people used to just watch it for All My Loving. You know, they may miss the rest of the show, but they always loved that family feeling of Johnny and the kids and All My Loving and swaying from side to side.
Kiss the person next to you and close your eyes. And I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you.
It's the enduring element of my life. You know, I walk down the street and people maybe don't recognise me or remember the name even, but they go, I know you. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. You know, they love it.
And so a TV juggernaut was born.
Hello and welcome to the first edition of Young Talent Time. You know, during the next hour you're going to meet some of Australia's finest young entertainers with super special guests, Anne and Johnny Hawker, and 3 contestants in our new Young Talent segment. Stick around, we're going to have a lot of fun. Don't go away.
Up against the football, Channel 10 had rated a 2 and a 3. There was nothing ratings. Our very first episode, we got a 19, which was incredible. And so by the time the first 4 weeks were over, I had a 4-year contract for Young Talent Time. You know, it was just amazing what happened.
Those 4-year contracts were extended over and over for 18 years, with that winning family-centric formula providing what was missing on Australian TVs. Over the years, the format would vary slightly, but the one crucial feature of Young Talent Time was the core group of performers known as the Young Talent Team. The same group of kids aged 8 to 16 who appeared with new dance routines, musical numbers and sketches every week. Brimming with talent. A Housing Commission kid from inner city Melbourne named Deborah Byrne could hardly believe the opportunity that had presented itself to her in 1971 when she was invited to audition for a brand new show made especially for talented kids, coming to Channel 10, then Channel O.
I was originally on a TV show on Channel 7 called Brian and the Juniors, and after 14 years that was taken off air. 6 of the original members of YTT came from Brian and the Juniors. We didn't come in as a group. We all auditioned separately. We didn't know each one was auditioning.
She became one of the original 6 cast members of Young Talent Time.
Apparently they didn't like my singing very much, but Maggie thought that I was a good dancer and she would like to have me. So that's how I got the job.
An opinion that would make you laugh on reflection, because Deb would go on to be one of the most successful performers to make a career in the entertainment industry of all the future casts. Known almost entirely for her powerful voice, which would make its way across Australian and international stages. Deb hardly aspired to be famous or on TV. Rather, at 13 years of age, she marvelled at how a spot on this show could mean more time doing the things she was most passionate about, singing and dancing as much as she could.
We were doing something that we all genuinely loved doing, and we were all good at what we did, you know, so there was not much to feel uncomfortable about, you know. It was just like, you know, when you're in a basketball team and you're working well as a team, that's a great feeling. It was very much just like that.
Deb says at the time, and as a young teen, she didn't comprehend just how much success the show was beginning to attract.
I wasn't aware of how many people were watching the show. I was aware that I was watching it with my family because you could, because it was taped then. I was aware of the kids at school watching it and getting teased about it. I really wasn't aware of how we were seen by so many people outside of, our little world that we usually lived in. I think that became more apparent when we started to tour, and you would go to Brisbane and thousands of people would turn up. And then that's kind of when it started to wow, because I remember getting to these places and thinking, look at all these people, because you're used to working in front of a camera. Yeah, of course, people are going to watch it, but you never imagine how many people. And that was always a huge surprise to us, I think, when we turned up at towns and hundreds and thousands of people had turned up.
Young Talent Time continued to grow in popularity, reaching a peak in the early 80s. That's around the time a plucky 12-year-old named Bevan Adensall became a cast member. Between Deborah's time on the show when it first began and Bevan's years in the later seasons, some 40 children who grew into teenagers were part of the Young Talent team. Though many of them didn't work together, they're all linked as part of the YTT family. Bevan says that was the key to the success of the show.
The most important, I would say, were probably the first 5 years of Young Talent Time's existence, because it got so many people knowing about it. They'd look forward to a new team member, but you still have the ones you already know and love. Do you know what I mean? So then it keeps growing and growing and growing and you've got that nice mix of familiarity of the people that you already know and the excitement of meeting somebody new that you're going to get to know as the teams changed.
Bevan remembers its widespread appeal.
You had your little kids that loved the dancing and singing, then you had your teenagers that loved it, and then, the parents and the grandmas and the grandparents loved the show as well. So it came into everybody's lounge room and people felt a part of it. So anybody growing up that had any inclination towards music and singing and dancing, of course, as a kid, this is the only show on television that is, the stars are kids. So, of course, you would want to be in it.
For budding singers, dancers and performers, Young Talent Time was aspirational. Oh, to be one of those glamorous kids singing and dancing on television. But the stars of the show weren't Broadway talents or career child stars. Often they were just regular working class kids plucked from suburban obscurity, who themselves were Young Talent Time fans. But spots were competitive, and if you were good enough, there were only 3 ways to get on Young Talent Time. The first was through the weekly competition.
Australia, welcome to our biggest night of the year. It's the National Talent Quest Grand Final on... Get ready for the contestants. But first...
That's where Nicole Cooper got her start in 1976.
I'd done some school plays and things, and we applied and got in, and they said, yes, you come in, be a contestant. And just as I was a contestant and won my heat, Sally Boyden announced she was leaving. And ABBA was the big thing, and I had the long blonde hair, and I think I was fresh in their mind. And they said, literally it was 2 weeks, do you want to join the Young Talent team? Well, big ask, I'm yeah, straight away. But Mum and Dad had 2 other kids, and my sister was into dancing. She ended up doing a lot of dancing for the rest of her life. And then my brother was motorbike mad. So they were running all of us around anyway, but they just said, look, of course.
For some, the competition was a springboard onto the show as a permanent cast member. But for many more young contestants, it was the chance to showcase an array of talents on national television, from tap dancing to puppetry and acrobatics. Melody Arkenstall was 15 when she appeared on the show, with a flute solo from the Star Wars score.
I was on the show 3 times as a contestant in their talent competition, And there was a heat, then a semi-final, and then a grand final, which I luckily won.
For her, it was overwhelming to see the magic of television up close. Delighted to be in the same room as her idols.
I just remember lots and lots of cameras and cameramen and sound equipment and like props and sets. It was all we took photos of it. It's so brightly coloured. And the costumes, all the costumes that they wore and, the wardrobe, it was thrilling. It was absolutely thrilling. And then Johnny Young came in and I said, "Hi, I'm Melody." And he said, "Hi, I'm John." And I mean, at 15, I was just gobsmacked that he felt he had to tell me his name. But now you realise, he's just being polite. But it was quite incredible to meet him. And for the first round, we sat in the green room while we waited to go on. And there's a few couches. On the couch next to me, there was this young actress. And she'd just started this new role. And her name was Minogue. I never talked to her, but I can just see her sitting there, with her hair and everything. And that was a good memory. Even now at my school reunions, that's the thing they always bring up. "We remember when you were on Young Talent Time." And I'm like, oh boy, But it was just like this big deal.
The second way to secure a coveted position on the Young Talent Time team was if you were scouted at one of Johnny Young's talent schools, dance and singing academies that were dotted across Australian cities. Vince Del Tito was one of those kids, spotted in a Melbourne dance class.
I was watching the show in the 70s. I think I was 5 or 6. I think with most of us growing up watching the show, you kind of take a liking to one or two members. And I think it's like becoming a fan of a band or a singer that you really admire and like. You look up to them. And Young Talent Time had a bit of that for me. Because at that time, I started singing. My mum sent me to the Johnny Young Talent School, where to learn to sing and dance and perform. So it was obviously, watching Young Talent Time was a big ambition to perhaps one day be part of that show. So I think when I was 10, I was asked to audition and I got a part to be a contestant, did that. And then a few years later, the opportunity came up where they were looking for a new team member. And I was asked to do the auditions. But I do remember they were very specific about what type of team member they wanted, the particular age and ethnic look. So I remember turning up and everyone looked the same. We're all 12-year-old ethnic-looking boys. And that was very intimidating, but that's where it started with me. Basically getting the opportunity from the talent school saying, hey, they want you to audition.
But of course, Young Talent Time was a show by kids, for kids. So when the cast members grew up or left the show to pursue other opportunities, there was always a space to fill. Vicky Thirlwell was a production manager on the show from 1986. She says the Australia-wide process of casting Young Talent Time, the third and final way to make it onto the show, was no small feat.
We had a couple of talent producers and they would set up on their own mini tour and go to Brisbane or Perth or Adelaide or Sydney and hold auditions, and they would see 100 kids in each state, and then they would set up a little recorder, bring that footage back. They would make their notes on who they thought might have been a possibility. We would have a look, and then we would start filtering them in as a contestant so we could see them on camera, see them perform, and then you start getting a sense of whether they might be able to join the team or not. So, there was a lot of people at Television House who managed all the different areas, and we all took it step by step.
Some stars of the show were picked up from remote towns and regional cities across the country. That's how Bevan got his big break.
I was actually a country boy. I lived in a country town called Dimboola, which is halfway between Melbourne and Adelaide. And everything was sport for me. My dad was very musical and very sporty, and I got sort of both of those off him. And I was in the Victorian Championships cross country. So we came down and stayed at some friend's house in Melbourne. And they had a piano in the front room, and I was, we came down to Melbourne for the cross country, and I was playing the piano, and they said to my parents that they'd seen in the paper that John Young was looking for a new boy for the team. Anyway, I didn't really hear about that conversation. We were driving out of Melbourne back to Dimboola, and Dad pulled over. Mum and Dad were talking about it, pulled over to a phone box, because there was no mobile phones back then, got into the phone box and called Television House and said, look, I think my son's got a pretty good voice. Can he get an audition? And they said, well, we've just auditioned 5,000 boys, but if he comes in now, we'll see him. So they turned the car around, we stayed at our friend's house again. I did an audition. They asked me back the next day, and then they called us a week later in Dimbulla and said, he's got the gig. So Mum and Dad sold the house and we moved down to Melbourne to start what was essentially my career.
Vicky remembers it being as much about recruiting the family as it was about securing talented kids.
The family would come in and sit down and have a meeting with John, and he would talk to them and he would explain to them what it was about, what the involvement would be, what the ups and downs were, and it was a family discussion, and it would be a family decision. And he would not put on any pressure. He'd lay it all out and he said, it's up to you now what you want to do. A lot of kids had to move interstate because it was based in Melbourne. So a lot of kids had to move and resettle there. And it's a big decision. It affects the siblings, it affects the parents' work.
For so many, it was a no-brainer. A chance at a life any normal kid growing up in Australia couldn't even imagine. A life in show business. As Joey D, a cast member in the final 2 years of the show, remembers, the opportunities they were given as part of the team were, to a young boy, unimaginable.
It was a show that people, whether it was my grandma or my mum or my dad or my siblings, we would sit down and watch it. And I think it meant so much. I mean, for me, being a kid from Essendon and obviously parents from Italy, and Dad didn't speak so great sort of English, and I mean, as an experience, like traveling, like I would never catch a plane for a day to Sydney. Like, it was unheard of spending $600 on a flight for the day to do an interview and come back. So like there was that element of it, which was like, staying in hotels and everything paid for. And it was seriously like, an amazing experience.
The team didn't just travel to gigs and meet and greets across the country. They were put on the world stage. At the World Expo in Brisbane in 1988, the young talent team joined industry heavyweights, including John Farnham, The Seekers, Icehouse, even pop icon Cher in shows broadcast around the world. They filmed for 2 weeks in Disneyland to record a 2-hour special, and another at Universal Studios. It was a taste of a life of fame and stardom that for some cast members was only just the beginning.
Without Young Talent Time, I would never be doing anything that I'm doing now. I don't think I'd be in the entertainment industry. I remember the Westfield tours because from the stage you would look out and they would always position the stage where they could fit the most amount of people in, because it was going to be as far as your eye could see, not one space left. It was absolutely chockers with people. Then your eye went up to the different levels of Westfield, and all of those levels were also filled with people. So it was that incredible feeling like you're in a dome of noise and excitement. And it's a rush. I loved it.
While almost all the cast members of YTT look back on their time on the show with great pride and fondness, it wasn't bright lights and tremendous success for everyone involved. Deborah Byrne, one of the first cast members we met earlier, used her passion and skill at performing to hide, forced to turn her musical gift into a sanctuary where she could escape.
I think for me, singing is a strategy that I was very lucky to have, and did it well and got to do it a lot, because that was, when you're singing, no one's near you. When you're performing, no one can touch you.
While others remember a nurturing and safe environment where children thrived, Deborah Byrne says her story is much darker, and her time on the TV juggernaut was coloured with personal pain.
I was dealing with having fallen in love with the sound operator who was 24 and I was 14, and then eventually he was charged with carnal knowledge, and that was all hidden from the press.
When Deb joined Young Talent Time as an original cast member in 1971, that gifted teenage girl could not have predicted how wounds, she says, were inflicted by a predator she met on the set of the show would come to shape the years ahead of her. Years filled with addiction, abuse, and depression.
That was massive. That was so hard to live through. And just talking about it now, my chest starts to get heavy. You know, that never fully leaves you.
Next time on Extraordinary Stories. As Deborah deals with the insidious aftermath of abuse, others in the Young Talent team continue to shine. Tina Arena takes us back to her first moments on Australian screens.
I just remember being an elated young kid, you know, living the dream. My life was so surreal at that time.
We look back to a time when Dannii Minogue appeared with her little-known sister Kylie for a special sister performance. And what became of our favourite YTT stars when they left? We'll pull back the curtain on the often triumphant but sometimes tragic turns life took for these teen celebrities when they left Australia's most beloved TV show. Thank you for listening to this episode of Extraordinary Stories, Australia's Child Star Factory. Extraordinary Stories is written by me, Emma Gillespie, and Sydney Peed, with production assistance from Laura Jackal and Kathy O'Brien. Audio production is by Madeline Joannou. The executive producer of Extraordinary Stories is Sydney Peed. We'll see you next time.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.